Hello, in this section, we're going to see how to create the security model for the users using privileges and roles. So first we'll take a look at what is the process. Now, generally what happens is you can create a role, right? And you can create a role from a security perspective, that is security folder, or you can create a role using SQL syntax. This goes the same to a user as well, and also granting privileges to a user and granting privileges to a role. You can either use a SQL script or you can use the graphical UI as well. Once you create a role, then you have to assign the privileges to a specific role. So if you see here, these are the different roles and privileges which you can assign to a role. So generally what happens is you create a role, you assign the privileges to a role, and then you assign the role to a user, right? So that this is when you're going to create a user, which we just did, and then you're going to assign the role to the user. Now let's take a look at the different privileges available inside the SAP HANA database. So this is basically the authorization model which is around a specific user. So there are different types of privileges. One is the object privilege, one is the package privilege, one is the analytic privilege, and one is system privilege. So the object privilege is basically you're basically giving the authority to the user to use a set of objects. Now anything and everything in a database is an object. So for example, schemas, actual models, and different procedures, all of these are objects in a specific scenario, and there are different kinds of privileges you can give on top of the objects. So you can say that, okay, fine, you have access to this schema, so naturally you have access to all the tables, but you can only run select queries in the specific schema. You cannot update, delete, and things like that. So you can control the access of tables by using object privileges. You can control the access to the objects, that is the SAP HANA models which we create, using the package privileges. So you can restrict the access by giving only privilege to access certain packages using the package privilege. System privileges for activities inside the system, for example, creating schemas, for example, administration, running certain queries for administration, restarting and starting the database, and all of the host of other activities which administrator needs to do, and other system privileges even a developer needs to do certain activities. Finally, you have the analytic privileges. Analytic privileges are the ones which control the access to the data inside a specific cube. So you control the access to the cube itself by the package privilege, but you control the access of the data inside the cube using the analytic privilege. So we'll see more of this in the actual exercise. So let's go ahead and create a role. So there are different roles available already here, but let's go ahead and create a new one. So you say right click and you say new role. Okay, we're going to call it training COPA role. And here you can assign another role to a role, or a part of a role to a role, right? For example, I can assign the role called public. It automatically assigns itself, but you can also assign the role called modeling. You can assign the role called content admin. So these are generic roles or default roles which are available inside the database when you install the database. Okay, now let's assume that our situation is that this particular user called training COPA or training COPA role, which training COPA role is the name of the role, and then training COPA is the name of the user. So we're going to create this role and then assign it to the user. Okay, so let's say that she should be able to see her own schema, which is training, and then she should also be able to see all the packages under training COPA. She should be also able to see all the models under training COPA, right? The system privilege, let's give her the privilege to create schema if she likes to do that, and then export. She should be able to export, right? So she should be able to export. So you can say export and import and in file admin. So that's, and then she should also be able to, so I'm going to give this grantable to others. What I'm doing here is I'm giving grantable to others. So what it means is that if training Copa wants to create a role in, or a user, then she can use all these as something she can grant to others. So I need all these repo objects. So I'm going to use all these repo objects here, and she can also give this to other users. A detailed description of what all these roles and privileges do is given in the security guide, which you can find at the bottom of this section. Please refer to them for detailed information. Now let's move on to the object privilege. This is where you give the access to the schema. So you can find your schema, you can type it. You see that you can find tables, you can find schemas, you can find procedures. But this is a procedure. So all of them are objects, right? And we are interested in the training schema here. So you click on the training schema. Now you can give the authority or privileges what she can do on top of training. So let's say that she can execute, she can select, and she can also give these to other privileges. Give this to other users, excuse me. And coming to analytic privileges, we have not created this as of now. We will create it, and then we will combine this whole exercise. And then finally, let's talk about package privileges, where we need to give access to the package called training Copa. Okay, there you go. So this means that she can also operate on training Copa. Let's give all the privileges. So she can read, she can edit them, and she can also export, import them. And she can also give this privilege to others. Okay, let's go ahead and activate this role. Okay, so I think this is done. Let's double check by going to roles and going all the way down. So you have a training Copa role here. All right, wonderful. In the next topics, we will see how to create an analytic privilege and how to actually get access into the database and see the actual data.